Mayor, Chief, we've got about 12 people on right now. I've got Alice Rudnick, Carl Williams, Carmel Patrick, Cheryl Valley, Kevin Spahn, Lieutenant McLaughlin, Lieutenant Antonovich, Dr. Warden, Lieutenant Mascherone.
Okay, is Chief Clifford coming on, or?
Yep, Chief's on.
Oh, okay. It just wasn't sure if he was going to take the lead on running the meeting, or was I going to do it?
Rob Warden
has joined the meeting.
I can, Mayor, if you prefer that. I have no problem with that.
Sure. It's all yours.
Okay. We will wait 3 more minutes and then we'll start promptly at 2 o'clock, not 2 minutes by my clock.
Hello.
Hi, Will. How are you?
Mr. Rivas, how are you?
Good news, sir.
Good.
Afternoon, everyone. It's Cengiz.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure how that was going, but I just muted everyone. So if you have to speak, just make sure you put yourself off of mute.
Has joined the meeting.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock. Let's get started today. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday at 2 p.m., our weekly steering committee meeting. I'd just like to introduce everybody. I am Eric Clifford. I'm the Chief of Police. For those that are new to the forum right now, we do have a couple guests I want to let everybody know. We do have Mayor McCarthy on the call and in the room with me. We are having some technical difficulties, so we're working from a laptop. But in the room with me, I have Commissioner Devine, Assistant Chief Sieber, and Assistant Chief Mallard with me. Carissa, do you have a count on how many we have on the call right now?
I do. I've got 21 people. You want me to go through who's on, Chief?
No, we don't need to go through. I just wanted to
Okay.
let everybody know how many people were on the call today. I do want to introduce a couple of our guests that we have. The couple things that we had spoken about last meeting that we had not discussed that are in the governor's executive order are restorative justice practices and community-based outreach and conflict resolution. So here to talk about both of those, I've invited Cheryl Valley. She leads the Center for Community Justice here in Schenectady. And she has invited Alice Rudnick of the Office of Dispute resolution with the unified court system to talk about restorative justice practices. And full disclosure, I'm going to be learning just as much as everybody else about this today, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl, and then Cheryl, you can go ahead and turn it over to Alice once you're ready.
I'm ready, Chief. Thank you very much. And by the way, I'm so glad that Alice decided to join us today, because she truly is an expert in the state of New York. And we talked for a few minutes before this call, and we talked about the fact that a number of people, myself included, have been trained in some of these practices, but these are practices that need to stick. And the whole point is for individuals to take over. We're not always going to have Alice Rudnick. Alice, I hope you'll be with us for a very long time, but the whole purpose of these trainings is so that there is, I hesitate to use the word legacy, but that these practices will be carried over for years to come. And
Participant has joined the meeting.
That said, I know a little more than you, Chief, but not a whole heck of a lot. So I'm going to turn it over to Alice, and she can, we will gain a lot from her 40 years of experience in these disciplines. So Alice, thank you so much.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm only able to hear you when you folks speak. I can only hear you vaguely. You know, if there's a problem with hearing me. So you asked for information.
Has joined the meeting.
You asked for information about alternative dispute resolution and restorative practices. Is that correct? Yeah. So since 1981, the New York State Unified Court System has been working with local not-for-profits in every county of New York State to provide alternative dispute resolution services. And those include, in most of those counties, restorative justice practices. And what that includes when we speak of restorative justice, I think it's important to understand that there's a principle behind it. There are principles and values behind restorative justice, as well as particular practices that employ those that are supported by those principles and values. So many of you may have heard of alternative dispute resolution very much lately because of the Chief Justice's initiative in presumptive alternative dispute resolution in the courts. And that's where the courts now are going. Before this initiative, they would have to opt in to make a referral for mediation, conflict coaching, circles, conciliation, other kinds of negotiation other than appearing in court. But as of the presumptive initiative, now courts would need to opt out of making a referral. So they're encouraged, and they've been getting training across the state in practices so that they understand what they are, and also how to provide those services and manage those services. So when I speak of alternative dispute resolution, specifically, we're talking about mediation, where there's a facilitator who works with a group of 2 or more people to help them have dialogue about what their issues are. It could be conflict coaching, where there is one-on-one, a facilitator who helps a person either prepare for a mediation or to just recognize they won't be able to have a mediation, but what's the best they can, what do they need to know, and how can they best go forward? And then restorative practices are part of that as well, where you might host a circle, or as in the case of CCJ, might have a community accountability board. That's under the umbrella of restorative practices as well. So primarily, the community dispute resolution centers have been working with mediation, conflict coaching, and family group conferencing. And what they found is that through the dialogue process, they're able to, parties who come to the centers are able to explore what the real underlying problems are, and also share ideas about what the values are behind those concerns, those issues, and then explore, come up with, share some ideas about some solutions that are possible, and evaluate those solutions to see whether they are feasible and whether they are durable. And what we found is that over the years, that more than 80% of people who come to mediation are able to come to a resolution, and that also more than 85% are satisfied with the process even when it does not come to a solution, an agreed upon solution. And right now the CDRCs provide these services for more than 70,000 individuals in more than 30,000 mediations or other services provided every year. Do you have any questions about what I've shared with you so far? Anyone? No? Okay. So I'm just going to run through some points that I've made from other presentations. So what we found is that alternative dispute resolution processes and restorative processes are meet a human need for connection and belonging. So as well for socialization, and they do that through the dialogue circle and conferencing. When there is harm, now oftentimes when we think of harm, there's a clear person who was harmed and person who was responsible for the harm. But oftentimes, if you're going into a situation, let's say like a family situation of custody visitation, everybody feels harmed. Everyone feels like they've lost something, they're losing something, or they've been misunderstood or misunderstand, or they've been lost something as a result of the dispute that they have. So when you're looking at restorative practices in particular, it's recognition that everyone wants to belong. It's a human condition. It's a human yearning to belong to community. And so I think that where you may be looking at this in particular as a municipality, that when someone has been harmed by vandalism or harassment or misbehavior, that there is a disturbing the peace, that there is a sense of even accountability being a vulnerability. That's hard to admit that we've done something wrong, that we might have hurt someone else, because we will lose that connection or that sense of belonging in our community. And one of the benefits of restorative practices or alternative dispute resolution is that it sets a field for being able to have those difficult conversations where people know that they will be respected and they will not be further harmed by the meeting. So for example, I'm one of the 2 people in New York State that conduct victim offender dialogues, where victims come to us wanting to speak with someone who is now incarcerated in a New York State facility. And so I've been working with Department of Corrections. We've been doing this for over 30 years now to facilitate that dialogue, that conversation. And why it's important is because the victim wants to know why it happened, typically why it happened. They want the victim, the person who's responsible for the harm, to know what the impact of their actions, their behaviors are. And so that is something that a victim offender dialogue is particularly well suited for, as is the community accountability panel or board process, because it gives people either the actual person who was harmed or a surrogate from the community, an opportunity to say, you know, what you did, it's more than landed you in jail or with this fine or incarcerated. You, as a result of what you did, the harm that you've done, our family lost a parent or a sibling or a child. The community lost someone who was contributing to the welfare and the betterment of the community. And this is the person you harmed. That person perhaps has lost, their life was lost. Well, this is the person. It's not just a life lost. It's not just a number. It's a person who had a life, who had a family, who had friends, who contributed to the community. And I think we're particularly sensitive to this right now because of COVID, because we're seeing these numbers of people who are lost, whose lives have been lost, who have been incapacitated because of severe illness. We're getting a sense of how numbers detract from understanding the person, the humanity that's behind those numbers. And it's really, I think, giving us a sensibility that we may not have had before, or we may have been struggling to have before. Any questions about what I've just shared? Feel welcome. Yeah.
This is Assistant Chief Sieber here. I have one question and kind of,
Sure.
I was trying to pay attention all the way along. Do you have anything, it sounds like most of what you do is after the arrest or after a conflict. Do you have anything like pre-arrest, like if we get a neighbor problem, we refer to you, your organization
Yes.
directly, or so you deal with
Absolutely.
other law enforcement agencies?
Yes, thank you for raising that. So in a number of our the counties, what has been done is that through understanding and relationship with police departments, that police would be have in some of them a kind of ticket that they can tear off and give to the parties and say, you know, you might want to talk to someone at the Dispute Resolution Center about this issue so that you can see if there are other ways that you might resolve it. They can provide you with a way of having a conversation about this to see if you can have a dialogue and discussion to come to some resolution. So it's funny that you mentioned that because I had a problem with that with my own neighbor in my townhome community, and we were able to talk it through. But there was a time there, even though this is what I professionally have been doing for more than 20 years, where I thought, oh my gosh, don't tell me I'm going to have to go to court with this person. I don't even know who they are. And so it does give that opportunity for neighbor-neighbor disputes, landlord-tenant disputes. So it's an early intervention, and we actually promote that as being an excellent best use of time to before a situation gets kind of embedded and embroiled, that where it's possible, yes, police are able to step in and be more of an officer of the peace than a law enforcement.
As a follow-up question, does this resolution center already exist like in Schenectady County or City of Schenectady, or is this something that we'd have to develop ourselves?
Oh, no. It already exists in every county of New York State.
Okay.
In Schenectady, it's called Mediation Matters.
All right. And then what's the success rate like? I mean, obviously, it takes two to agree to mediate. What's the success rate that you generally have as far as neighbor disputes, such as you said, coming together and actually come up with a remedy through your agency?
As I said, that it's typical that about between 75 and 80% of matters are resolved through mediation. And that even when they're not resolved through mediation, in terms of, a written agreement, let's say, that people are satisfied that they felt like they had an opportunity to at least express what they were concerned about and hear what the other party was. So they're satisfied with the process. Now, I started as a volunteer in Schenectady County through the Mediation Center. And I remember going to city court and mediating cases in the court building that were referred from the court, and someone from Mediation Matters would get up and say, the judge would say, you have an option. This sounds like a case that could be handled through mediation. Is this something that you're amenable to? If so, you can go with Ms. Rudnick into this other room and see if you can resolve it through mediation. So it doesn't preclude your having another way of resolving the issue as such as going to court.
Can I ask? Go ahead.
Good. No, I just as a follow-up, we're very, as far as going through the courts, that we understand is just how we put this process into work prior to a person being arrested or prior to, obviously a conflict resolution here. How do we instill with our officers to make a smooth transition, but yet we don't have to go back later because they're fighting?
Well, there's no guarantee. Yeah, there's no guarantee that you're not going to have to go back. Mediation is not a panacea. It's a way of uncovering what the real issues are. So, for example, we look at it as like the positions and the values and the needs. And of course, you may want to have a presentation for your police officers on what this is so that they have some sense of confidence in it. I would strongly encourage that, because if they don't know what it is, how will they be able to promote its use by the people that they're referring to the service? Does that make sense? Or?
No, it makes perfect sense. Obviously, there has to be a degree of education for the public and officers as well. But the commissioner had a follow-up question too.
Sure.
I'm just curious. Having seen a lot of disputes over the years and having them rekindle time and time again, I'm just curious on your statistics. What is a resolution? And does anyone keep track as to whether that dispute arises again 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later?
Well, we work for the court system. So, yes, we on data. And we have records, as I said, that go back almost 40 years. But we're always looking at what are the kinds of situations. So the data that we collect is what kinds of situations, what are the parties coming to, how they're getting referred to us, whether it's something that they have a reoccurrence of, what do they feel that they accomplished in the course of the mediation. So it might be that they're able to talk about something they haven't been able to even talk about before.
No, I understand, but when you say you have a success rate and you have a certain number of resolutions, what is a resolution? Does it take into account cases where it arises, the argument erupts again several months later?
Sure. I mean, they can always come back if their agreement, let's say their agreement, well, if you give me an example, it will help, because since we deal with everything from divorce and personal property and family relationships and custody and visitation and guardianship, and it's a big spectrum that I work with, that the centers work with across the state. I'm happy to provide information. Follow up.
I guess I'm just asking you how you define resolution.
If the parties come to an agreement and understanding that they're willing to go forward with, that's an agreement that's considered a resolution. If they decide that, and so let's just say for, you were talking about neighbor, I believe. So let's say they in a lot of neighborhoods, we don't know our neighbors. We're not like it was in the 50s, let's say, or other times when we were more. I've lived in this community now, this particular cul-de-sac, for over 10 years. I don't know everybody who lives on this cul-de-sac of 40 units. Now, that's kind of ridiculous. I grew up in Manhattan, and I had more people on one floor than on 2 floors than I have in my whole cul-de-sac. And I knew everybody in the building. But I don't here because we're driving cars, because we have separate lifestyles. It's very different than it was when I was growing up. But that said, I don't even know when my neighbor was making noise late into the night and he didn't realize that I could hear the sound of his speakers, that they were actually, the bass was pounding against the wall. But I didn't feel comfortable going to speak with him about it because I didn't know him. And so being able to, taking that initiative was important to me, but this is what I do. For somebody else, they might have wanted to go to make a referral. And I thought about someone from the city said, well, why don't you just call the police department and make a complaint? And I said, I don't think that's what this community, I don't think that would fit so well in this community. I don't think it would serve my purpose. And so that's the kind of interpersonal relationship. I'm not moving. This other person's not moving. How do we sustain or build a relationship? And that's what I want to get back to, because I think where we're talking about the police and the dispute resolution centers and all the other community services, building those relationships with each other is what will sustain the community members going forward. And you're right. If someone continues to have a dispute, there's no judgment about needing to come back to a dispute resolution center. There's no charge for it to begin with.
Alice, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any police departments or communities that you currently work with that you could reflect on as being a model of what we could possibly do here in Schenectady as far as implementing this? It would appear to me that this is very similar to LEAD, which is law enforcement assisted diversion, but where LEAD really focuses on victimless crimes, this is more leaning towards not necessarily crimes, but issues where there could be victims involved. So is there anything that you could refer to us that we could possibly look at, or are you aware of any?
I think I just meant for this to be a very brief, so longer than I thought it would be because of your agenda. So I apologize if I've taken more of your time giving you this introduction. But I'm happy to gather more information and do a follow-up call specifically on this particular interest that you have.
And I thank you very much. And I apologize for you if we made this longer than what we originally said. You're correct in that we were just asking for a really brief introduction, and we kind of turned this into more of a dialogue. But it's I think that the fact that we've talked this long, it is something that we find interesting. So maybe we could talk more on it when we have more time. Does anybody else have any questions?
And I think it's a great example of what dialogue does. So thank you for bringing that up. Because, see, we just thought you were just going to get a presentation, but we ended up in dialogue. And as a result, you know me better, and I know you better, and you know what I'm talking about a little better. And I'm happy to come and talk with you in any format again. This is something that I've dedicated my life to, and I feel very strongly that this is a key element of healthy communities. So it's my pleasure, my privilege to contribute to Schenectady being a stronger community, healthier community for everybody.
And Chief, this is Cheryl. If I can just jump in for 1 second. One of the things that Alice and I were talking about prior to this call, to me, which is the beauty of this whole process, is that you find out things about the individuals. And in the case of the Community Accountability Board, for example, but not just CAB, you find out resources. So I was thinking of Brian, our community police officer. You find out resources that the individual needs. And so you're able to take a look at the whole person, really, rather than, or not necessarily just that thing that brought you two together. And that to me is always great, because often there is something underlying And sometimes you find out what that is. And so you're able to be a part of making that situation better. So that's
Yeah.
what I like about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Cheryl. Because, for instance, some of your issues in the city might be from shop owners, business owners who have young people roaming in the streets right now, especially with virtual education, schools closed for, virtual education. And so, but this went on anytime. And so what do you do with the young people who are roaming the streets? Well, maybe they're truant. And so the Community Dispute Resolution Center also work with schools on addressing why is that student not in school? Why is that student roaming the streets? What else can they do? What other services are available for them? Especially when people are new to the community. But look, I'm honest. I live in Niskayuna, and I took your survey, and a lot of it didn't apply to me because I don't live in Schenectady. But I in Schenectady all the time. I'm there to go to the library. I'm there to go to before COVID, to the theater. I'm there to go to stores. It matters to me how Schenectady exists. If it's a safe place to be, if it's a safe place to visit with friends, to go to restaurants, to go to businesses. It's a much bigger web than just the city of Schenectady that you're talking about when you say keeping Schenectady safe and respectful for all residents. So I thank you for all your efforts and thank you for inviting me. Now you know how to reach me.
Right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. I mean, this just so the whole panel knows that the task force, this is the most important topic on our agenda. So if I'm not sure if you would mind, Cheryl and Alice, if anybody has any questions, but I would certainly be willing to dedicate the time. We have a half hour left. If anybody had any questions, whether you could answer them or not, you could always, or we could just talk amongst ourselves about it. If anybody has any comments on this.
Whatever you'd like. I scheduled until 3 o'clock to have another meeting.
Alice and Cheryl, thank you. This is Genghis Khan. Just one quick question.
Sure, Genghis. We met before.
Yeah, how are you? And
I'm well, thank you.
Talk to you again. Thank you. Definitely, you can get referred to the program via the courts. Is there other paths? Maybe I missed it. It wasn't.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. The courts are about 50% of our referrals, but other agencies can refer. People come to the centers themselves. When they know about us, they can call up. They come through churches, law enforcement, just knowing about it, other agencies that we work with. We have many stakeholders and partnerships and collaborations across the state.
Follow up on that. Do you do active advertising for people to just come directly to you, or?
Well, the agencies do.
Okay, it's just through the agencies.
Yeah, in each county. Okay. We don't do it statewide other than our website, if people know. But for example, I'm always trying to increase and improve the outreach. So that's one of my specialty areas. So I work with restorative justice practices in schools and building up community services for elder adults in dialogue and decision making, which is a big interest right now because as our population ages, now their adult children are involved with decisions about health care and residents and who's responsible for what. And of course, with identity theft, that's another big issue because it's often a matter of a family member who's responsible for the identity theft. So we work with adult protective services as well. So all of those pieces. And now I'm developing a program to work with individuals identified with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families, because there are issues around, well, neighbor, landlord, tenant, workplace issues. All of those can be addressed through our services. And everyone has those.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alice. Thanks for working.
So, Alice, I think if I can just piggyback onto Cameron's question. So you can self-refer, correct? but trying to find that information isn't always easy. So are there tools, or will there be tools developed? I mean, if somebody knew enough to call me, I could say, oh yeah, I can tell you where to go. But someone who just doesn't even know, maybe not be familiar with the language, with the process, or that CDRC even exists in
Right.
county, then that's difficult. So how do we do that?
So this is what when I do a presentation like this, thank you for that segue, Cheryl. This is my call to you, is that now that I've spoken with you, now you know that this exists. Now it's your responsibility. Each of you are ambassadors about this. And if you know someone who is in a challenge with neighbor, landlord, tenant, custody, visitation, divorce, consumer, business person, did I say landlord tenant already? But any of those issues, then you can share that information with them, that this exists in every county and the service is at no cost. And so why not try that? Because by having you say that, it's not a cold handoff, right? It's that I've heard about this. It sounds great. Wouldn't you want to talk about it? Now it's something beyond just, I read about it in the paper. But we do outreach. Each of the centers is responsible for doing outreach. It's the bane of my existence. Thank you, Genghis.
Right. And these are individuals who are professionally trained. I know I've been through mediation training, and it's, again, to be, there's quite a process to the training. You're not just trained and then, okay, you're good, you can go out and do mediation. It's not that simple. So these are individuals who are professionally trained, will keep the process safe and appropriate, and something that all of us should feel good about making referrals to.
Thank you. Our training is a professional training. We're always improving it. We do the trainings virtually now. We actually have over 1,000 volunteer mediators across the state. In every county, we encourage that training. We count on it. That's part of our commitment. And so the not-for-profits are responsible for providing that training under our supervision. And the mediators are required to have continuing education as well as continuing practice every year. And so there are model standards of service and of practice that we adhere to. So there's an ethical component for mediators. The standards are nationally approved. And the core values that I referred to are confidentiality. So even when a court makes a referral, the privacy of the parties is upheld with confidentiality about anything that's discussed. And safety, so we have screening for issues that might compromise the quality of participation in our services, such as influence of power over another, such as domestic violence, as well as child abuse or neglect issues. We have it's all voluntary, so no one's forced to participate. And the issues that are brought up for the agenda or the decisions that are made are self-determined. And the volunteers and the staff that are mediating have a code of impartiality. So we don't have a horse in the race. It's up to the parties. And we do a lot of cultural humility training to support that lack of that understanding the impact of bias that it might have on the parties and on the results of a mediation. Anything else pop up for you?
Wow. All right, anybody have any other questions before we move on to our next topic? Again, thank you very much, Alice. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Cheryl, also. You're welcome to stay on as we continue our discussions, just in case anything comes up, or you're welcome to take off. We do appreciate your time, of course. The next thing I'd like to discuss briefly, I'm sure, is to ask Dr. Warden to maybe give us a quick update of where we are on the survey. I know that it's been passed around as really a final draft for us to just kind of test out, and so we're looking to see where we're at with that. Dr. Warden.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. The link that you all got was intended as a preview when everyone is ready. And I won't be the determiner of that. I'll leave that to Mayor McCarthy and Chief Clifford and Sarah McLean, who has done yeoman's labor on this. But one link will go, I believe, through Carissa to the memberships of the various organizations. Another link, a separate link, will be posted somewhere on the city's website. So we'll have respondents from one definable population so that we know and can describe the population to which we can draw inferences from respondents. And another population, whoever it is that clicks the link on the city's website with the same survey, but we'll be able to differentiate between the two. We'll download those data, we'll analyze and summarize the data, and we'll incorporate the results into our that will be blended with thematic analysis that Sarah is currently doing of the public input, both transcriptions of the community conversations and the other public input that was provided either by email or in the chat. Anything else anyone wants to know at this point? And he said in the hopes that he can answer such questions. Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much, Dr. Warden, and hopefully we get that out soon. And we'll, and then we get the results back, and looking forward to looking through all of them. Just going through our agenda topics. The next thing I wanted to make a brief mention on is that we have been in discussions with Cheryl and the Center for Community Justice about putting together a partnership, a collaborative on de-escalation training. And I wanted to just make the steering committee aware of the fact that we were working on that, and we will have more of an announcement in the next month moving forward. But it's pretty exciting stuff. I wanted everybody to recognize that we are working with Cheryl's organization on this, and there is a private partner that's working with us on it. Can't really reveal too much at this point right now, but if anybody had anything that they wanted to ask about de-escalation training in general, we could maybe see if we can answer it. And we do plan on having a more thorough conversation about it in the future. Like I said, it'll be before we present our plan to the council, but we're just not ready to discuss it yet. Questions on that? Okay. Last couple things that we had here. Looks like we're ahead of time too. I did want to mention that our actually we have Dick Shave on the line too, with both him and Carl Williams, our chairman and co-chair with the Civilian Police Review Board. We are progressing with discussions with them on our complaint form update. And Dick, do you have anything you want to give us on that? I know that it's moving through your organization there, and I don't just maybe give us a status update on it.
Well, it's pretty much ready to go. I'll turn the floor over to Carl because he did 96% of the work. But looks like we're finally. It's been almost 6 months. Good grief to change a form, but I guess these things take time, and we did devote some effort. What do you say, Carl?
Hey, so good afternoon, Mayor, Chief Clifford, and Commissioner Devine. During our last general meeting on the 13th of this month, we spoke about including the additional endorsement of the chair of the board to be on the welcome page or the introductory page of the criminal or personnel complaint package. We needed to change some pronouns to have it be a more inclusive message, but I think what actually happens is by having those two organizations on the front, it makes it more collaborative and more unified. And I definitely think that having both of your offices on that front page definitely speaks to the genuine intent of not only your office, Chief Clifford, but also the objective of the review board to kind of be there as an ancillary body for the public. In addition to that, we took over some of the recommendations from the council to include removing the request to whether people spoke English as a primary language. So we took that off, and then we also included the addresses and included a point of contact for a civilian police review board member. My plan and expectation is to have the form and the community point of contacts finalized by the end of the weekend, which will then be presented to yourself, Chief Clifford, and then the members of the council for their final opinion and review.
Thank you, Carl, for that. Anybody have any questions? Okay. The last thing that I wanted to mention while we're here, again, it's a brief mention, but just to keep everybody in the loop, is that earlier, really before this steering committee was even formed, early last year, we had begun discussions with the Anti-Defamation League about providing training to the police department. And with everything that happened really from the summer on, those discussions kind of took a back seat to these reform efforts. But I've reached out to them to restart those discussions. And the reality of it is that they were on pause also with COVID and unable to do any training, still are unable to do any training because of COVID. But we're hopeful that we're on the back nine of COVID rather than the front nine. So we're hopeful that we can have training sometime this year, or we can at least start planning it. So we will be working towards that.
Chief, what's the specific training?
I don't have the specifics right in front of me. I thought I did in my book here, but I don't. But it's it's related to bias. And, everything that has to do with hate crimes, things along those natures.
Thanks.
So we've gone through our agenda. We have 15 minutes to spare. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to raise at this time? We'll keep this as an open forum for the next 15 minutes. If anybody has anything they want to bring up.
So just one logistic question. I know, Doctors Warden McLean at Finn are working on the survey, but is there in some status, a compilation of what we had heard from the meetings to some extent so far, even prior to the survey information coming in? Or were you going to wait until all of it comes in?
Well, Sarah isn't waiting, Cengiz. She's been coding the transcripts of the community conversations. She's currently coding the other public input. Sarah's dyed-in-the-wool qualitative researcher. She goes through several iterations of coding the qualitative data, and in fact, she didn't participate in this meeting today because true to her methodology, she doesn't want anything anyone says today to influence the way she interprets and codes the data. So when she's finished that coding, she'll follow through on the analysis to summarize the themes that emerged based on the coding that she's done. So a lot of work has been done, and we're working toward the culmination of both the qualitative and, when the survey is completed, the quantitative summaries of the public input.
Thank you, Dr. Warden, and tell Dr. McLean thanks. I know it's difficult stuff. I was just saying that from the perspective of keeping in mind our deadline, right? Because it comes up fast,
we're
right? So
painfully mindful of that.
yeah. No, I know you're right. Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else with anything else? Okay. Commissioner, anything?
No, well, frankly, for Alice and Cheryl, I started with the Public Defender's Office in 1971. And we had a department called Alternatives to Incarceration, where we tried to divert certain people's, even then, out of the justice system and perhaps into treatment or what have you. And I've always felt that the best place to divert is on the street before things get out of control. And the idea of going to a situation and referring people to mediation, I think, is really appealing and a really great idea. And I hope we can work to further that. It would almost be nice if there was a little bit of a mandate for people to go to mediation. I'm thinking of those situations where an officer goes to the scene and it's the type of situation where it's not all that serious and things get straightened out and everybody goes their separate ways. And so it doesn't rise to the level where someone would have to go to court, but perhaps getting people into mediation might mean that that situation doesn't arise again. And I'm intrigued by the idea of perhaps having some sort of incentive or mandate for people to go to mediation. It's just a comment on this, but so far what I've heard, I think, is a great idea.
Thanks, Commissioner. Chief?
No, I'm all set.
No, sir.
Alice and Cheryl, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Mayor, anything?
No, want to just thank everybody for participating today. And again, we're chipping away at this and going to have a good end product that we're all going to be proud of. So thank you. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
A participant has left the meeting. Has left the meeting.
Chief,
John Lubrick.
could you stay on for just a minute before I just wanted
Has
to touch
left
base.
the meeting.
When did you
A
want to meet again?
participant has left the meeting.
Next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just send it out. We had that standing weekly meeting until further notice, so yeah, we'll do it next Monday or next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about what our agenda will be. Seems like we pulled together an agenda for today, but we're starting to lose topics to really discuss. So,
Right.
we'll know by Monday what we have, and if we have to cancel and skip a week, we can. But let's plan for Wednesday for now.
Okay. And then everybody has the survey link. I was talking with Alex and Gary earlier. We're thinking about just doing a press release, and then he would really, announce it during State of the City that that's available. I think the only change going through it was Sarah's got to include 12309.
Okay.
But I didn't.
She had
anything else.
there's a typo or two in here also.
Okay.
I can send them to you. But
Yeah,
hey, so
please.
when does she want to send this out, the survey? How soon?
I think the sooner the better. I know the mayor wants to send it out yesterday, so
When's the State of the City?
Monday.
Okay. So obviously have it posted sometime this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything in there about NA for things that are not applicable, because it's going to throw the data off?
Mike, you're all background noise.
Any better or no? I just wondered if you wanted to add NA, because there are some questions that doesn't apply.
Not applicable.
Oh,
Maybe you write that recommendation.
Yeah. Yes.
You'll do it?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right. Yeah, we'll take care of that. It's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Adios. Thank you.
All right.
See you.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Participant has left the meeting.